flying up through all those rain showers today, and I think I said a couple things over the intercom to Craig. I said, every time I come up here and fly and think about this, and I'm a radio guy, so you and I are, we're going to have a great conversation sometime soon. I was just thinking about going IFR and flying the beam, you know, which is basically giving you horizontal guidance.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see the instrument procedures for the entire flying the beam, both for horizontal guidance and vertical guidance.
I've got all those sketches. But I just thought of something, by the way. You know, this is 1946. I came north. In 1947, we had some radio gear put in. They said it's secret. And it was UHF and ultra-high frequency. It was, this is only 2 years after the war was over. So it was the beginning of the results of the war. All the electronics of the war began to flow into us, and it changed everybody's lives, including ours. As a matter of fact, I was a Morse code operator until the transistor came along and messed that up. But in 1947, I'm sitting in a bush camp, 75 miles off the Alaska Highway. We've got this secret piece of radio, and all it is a transmitter and receiver. And we were talking to the Strategic Air Command at 50,000 feet in 1947.
Wow.
And nobody knew that kind of thing because it just happened. And that was the beginning of the ground side, and it just kept on going. But that was step number one. But you know what? Those guys did, well, we had a secret station monitoring Russia up on the hill here. But those guys wouldn't tell you where they were. No such thing as a PX or position report from the Strategic Air Command. They didn't even want to talk to you. They just wanted to get a little bit of weather or something, and then they keep their mouth shut because they were 50,000 feet. And you could work them, sorry, I'm getting into my shop talk, but you could talk to them several hundred miles away because they were at 50,000 feet and you were working line of sight, but they would never tell you where they were because the Russians were listening. And that's just one of the little things that happened in a bush camp 100 miles from the Alaska Highway. We were tuned in. You see, that's the other thing, that this radio guy and I could talk for hours. I was sitting in a bush camp, and as I said, and I had radios all over me, around me. On the midnight shift, if I wanted to, and I did, to get my Morse code up higher, I listened to San Francisco sending the weather, or sending their newscast to Hawaii. And then I would type it out, and one of the kids he was from Toronto, he said, please give those to me every day, Doug, because I love to tell my old man that I get the news in this place before he does in Toronto. And that's the kind of things and those are the little, really, I guess the little dimensions. Each step of our career in radio was reflected in the rest of the society. But it was all happening in a bush camp. I mean, I step out that door and there could be a bear, just like we just had, but in that room, I had the world at my top. I talked to a fellow, for example, one time, and it must have been a ham. He was in Georgia, and it was 40 or 50 below where I was, and he just could not comprehend the fact that temperature, and we were using Morse code, but he was just flabbergasted. And that's the kind of things that could happen with, and this was wireless radio, not the other thing that you and I would probably talk about is that wireless was totally different. You know that the telegraph system that Northwest Tel put up, or CNT it was called, to get from a message from Dawson Creek to, let's say, to Alaska, they had to put up 90,000 poles and then wire. We could put up a radio in a bush camp, anywhere you name, give us some power, a place to sleep and eat, and we could communicate with the world because it was wireless. Quite a bit of difference.
Doug, I have a quick question for you. Is there any surviving radio gear left from the radio range? Is there any of that?
Yeah, Jana's got some
There's some
here. You
here.
know the radio, the LFR, the radio range?
Yeah.
Right, she's got some here.
Wow.
And there's a
Yeah.
very nice display in Teslin
If
as
you
well.
wanted to have a look at it, I mean, it's one of those things that I could, you know, it's there's a sideband and a carrier transmitter. I don't think it's a goniometer,
Yeah.
but you can put the whole system together.
Yeah.
Because but it's built like a tank. I mean, I almost, when I was working on those things, they had steel sides that you would take off to get your hands in to change the tubes on. And you needed a Boy Scout to help you lift it off. It was that, they were that skookum. Because the ones at Tasman, you would appreciate this story. This was just a couple of years ago. They closed the place about 40 or 50 years ago. Somebody bought the shack, it was a nice log cabin, this hardware was in, you know, with the range towers and everything. They took the towers down and got rid of that steel. But they sold this log cabin with all these fancy electronic hardware. And these things were, there's 5, 6 of them, the size of a fridge, filled with electronics. Whoever bought it said, I don't want this damn stuff, and threw it out in the bush. That's the stuff that's now up in Tesla. It sat there for that long, but it was so well built, including some of the tubes. They wouldn't be working anymore, of course, but that's the kind of stuff that we were using and working, and that's why it was so stable. And the instrument landing, I have, by the way, if you'd like them, the instrument landing systems for an LFR, you know how you're supposed to do, I forget what they call them now, but you know what, that was another thing. We were sitting on the ground, but we had to know all of those letdowns. There was 5, 4 or 6 of them. What were they called?
Well, they would have, well, the letdown points?
No, they each had a name because you took a different type of approach depending on how you were, on the weather conditions and everything else. There was different forms. I can't remember.
Well, I guess it would be almost the same as doing an ADF approach, right, Alan? I mean, the ADF approaches would have been...
Well, you go down one leg and then you go across another, and you know, it was...
Oh, you just hit a common set of waypoints, basically.
But it was, you know, I used to go up with the pilots and do that kind of thing. You know, I'll tell you one other story about when we used to go out and search airplanes. Watson Lake, Gordy, the weather guy, he had a little Taylor craft, a little 2-seater, not very heavily powered, I don't think it was. We were out on a search, and I'd never had this happen before. And we had our line given to us, and our altitude, the whole bit. And Gordy was in the left seat, and I'm sitting there looking down, checking the bush, and we were over a small lake, just a little bush-type lake, and it looked like it had I got fascinated by it because it looked like it had a little fried egg in it almost. It was a little circle of orange and then something around that. And I just noticed it. And a couple of minutes later, I looked down again, that area, and it was still right below us. I finally said, Gordy, I know this is going to sound like a stupid question, but we don't seem to be moving. And he said, we're not, Doug. He said, and we were coming up to it. There was a ridge of mountains right here in front of us, and there was almost like a gun sight wound, a sharp cut in the ridges. And he said, the wind is coming up, and it's equaling our airspeed, so we're just not moving anywhere. So he said, so I'm going to go down, and we'll go through that cut and back up and pick up our line again. But I never stopped in midair before, and I never have since, and I don't plan to do it. Did you ever? That was one of them. I could tell you stories about searches that would drive you nuts.
Well, that's the other part of the scenario that I want to learn about, is the search and rescue throughout Canada. And right down to the dogs with the parachutes that they would send out of the planes, and they'd jump after the dogs.
Oh. Well, I never got in on one of those. That was after our time, but yeah. That's what we did as ground radio guys. It was actually great for us too, because we could go up and search airplanes, and then we could talk to pilots, and you know, we get a feel for up. And we did that a lot, and it was interesting. It was fast. It was no different than on the ground, really, because, you know, I can remember being in Watson Lake, and it's in the middle of winter, and Watson Lake was about 30 below. And these people were in a small airplane, I forget what kind, but there was 4 of them. They were dressed pretty much like I am, except a little jacket, a little summer jacket, and no overshoes or anything. And this is 30 below. And I said, have you got your safety gear in the back there? No, this is all the clothes we got. People used to fly up here in the wintertime, dressed for summertime, because they had a nice warm airplane around.
Well, we're equipped like we're going to be in the bush for a month. That was rule number 1.
What are those planes that they were flying over, what did they have for heat for back then?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what our airplane has in it. It's got the radial engine. The exhaust stacks come off the back side of the engine. And right up at the very top, there's a piece of sheet metal that comes around, and it's what they call a heat muff. And all it does, it just has a chamber that gets some fresh air into it that's heated. And it comes down a pipe right by the rudder pedals where my feet are. There's 2 little openings down there with rotating closures, if you will. And you rotate one with your foot for fresh air, or you can close it and you rotate the other one open for hot air. So you're either going to be boiling hot or you're going to be freezing cold, one of the 2. That's what we have for heat, and any of the heat that comes through. On some of the other aircraft, pretty much the same. You know, they're just collecting heat off the exhaust system and funneling it into the cabin. Most of the time, though, when it's really cold, you know, in the -20, -30 range, it's pretty ineffective.
Yeah.
Because those canopies leak a lot of heat out, and they bring a lot of cold air in.
I could go on.